2020. And I'd like to call upon the secretary to call the roll.
Just want to make, okay, we're live. Just wanted to make sure IT. Okay, private members, Michael Spitzer, Chair.
Present.
Larry and Angelo.
Present.
Mark Kaplan.
Here.
Bud Larson.
Present.
Our public members representing Mayor Bill de Blasio, Raymond Lee.
Present.
Representing Controller Scott Stringer, Jacqueline Thompson.
Present.
Representing Public Advocate Jumani Williams, Michael Toomey.
Present. Present.
Quorum.
Thank you. I'd like to have a motion to accept the minutes.
I move that.
I'll second it.
There's no comments?
They were very short.
Thank you. I just want to say one thing before we really begin, and I worked with him a long time, and I'm saddened to report that Alan Anders passed away. And for those of you that don't know, Alan was a longtime member of OMB, and I worked with Alan on a lot of creations of a lot of the financing authorities that Alan would always come before the audit committee to present. So I just want to put onto the record that the audit committee offers condolences to his family, and we wish them well. Thank you. At this time, the one item on the agenda is the deferred comp plans of the city of New York. And Joan, I saw your name on the screen someplace. So
I'm only on the phone. You wouldn't see me on the screen. So I prepared something to present this morning.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. Are your auditors also on the phone or the Zoom?
They were supposed to be here. Yes, they're not on. Yes,
hey, Joan, this is Thomas Ray. Hey, Mr. Chair, the auditors are on.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you.
So, Joan, I don't know if Georgette is on the screen, but I'll turn the meeting over to you at this time.
Yes, it's just from the deferred comp. It's myself. I'm Joan Barrow, the chief accountant, and Beth Kushner. She's the deputy director. She's also on the. She should also be on the screen.
Yeah, I saw Beth, but
I'm here.
Yeah, iPad number 2.
iPad number 2, that's me.
Yeah, that's one of the things about Zooms. A lot of us get new nicknames. So I'll turn the meeting over to you, and I see you had one of your somebody from the audit firm also represented on the this meeting.
Yes.
There's actually several staff from the audit firm. If you would like to introduce them, yeah. Thomas.
Let me unmute myself. I begin talking without remembering to do that. So again, my name is Thomas Ray. I'm the engagement partner for the financial statement audit. I do appreciate Joan having some materials to present, but I also have Tim Rao, who was the engagement manager, on the phone. He, I believe, is just on the phone, not sharing his screen, just in case he needed to go through any materials or share his screen. And then part of the contract, in addition to a financial statement audit, is a cyber assessment that we conduct. And I believe, I can't see them, but it's possible I've got either or Jim Kreiser, who's the principal for the cyber assessment, and Phil DeBello, who is the manager for that cyber assessment.
Okay, thank you. And Joan and Beth, we have the materials for the cyber audit, and as well as the audited financial statements. And Katrina, the secretary, has the ability to share the screens. So if you want us to refer to a certain page, I believe she'll be able to get us to that page.
Just let me know what page you want to be on.
So
Okay, thank you.
I'll turn it over to Joan and Beth at this point.
Okay, so this is Joan Barrow, the Chief Accountant, New York City Deferred Comp, and we are presenting the 2019, the DCP audit. The combined planned fiduciary net position exceeded $23 billion at December 31st, 2019. That was an increase of $4 billion from the previous year. The total net investment income was $4 billion for all 4 plans. Most of the plans' investment options exceeded their benchmarks. Deferred Comp had a net increase of 8,000 participants in 2019, and the total deferrals of compensation and participants rollover exceeded $1 billion for the 3rd consecutive year. And that's it. That's what I prepared, and we are opening up. If anyone had any questions on the actual information that was in the CAFA, Beth or myself are prepared to answer those.
Well, one comment I'd like to make is congratulations on getting the GFOA award. I think it was the 25th year.
Yeah.
Can tell you.
Yeah. It was
Yes, the 25th consecutive year. That's correct.
Well, congratulations on getting that. And,
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Give me a second, Mike. I'm flipping through the pages here. Looks like I did have some scratch marks, but I don't remember what. Oh, one of the things, I mean, this is nitpicking stuff. You guys will have to forgive me. But on page 14, what is it, 14 or 44? I can't read it. Mutual funds are valued at the closing prices as reported by the fund. Mutual funds are done net asset value. They don't have closing prices. I just point that out. Because the next sentence says the funds are required to publish their daily net asset value and transact at that price. So that's how they get valued.
The plan actually doesn't have any mutual funds. They're all separate accounts or commingled funds.
Then why do you have the disclosure about it then? There's a whole paragraph about mutual funds.
I don't know if that's something the auditors. 44. I think that's part of the note 3, the fair value measurements.
Yeah. I couldn't. I agree with you. I wasn't sure why you had that, but
the mutual funds are for the self-directed brokerage. Those accounts. Those accounts have mutual funds.
well, if that's true, then you probably ought to refer to it as net asset value. And then you guys haven't been with me before. I found a whole bunch of little things like singulars and plurals, and I don't know what to do with them. I'm not going to take up every time with that sort of stuff. But maybe I'll just find a way of getting this marked up document to you. Now, when I see the securities that you own abroad, what I'm looking at, I know you foreign currency and all that sort of stuff, but it's hard for me, somebody who used to be in the business, to figure out why you'd have something that was $4 million in the portfolio of the Philippine pesos. It seems so small that it's not worth having. The same thing is true of the, what is it? one of these things is at $8 million. And the cost of watching it is probably disproportionate to the benefit of being invested in it. That's a business question that I'm wondering. And how you decide to go into which currencies there. I just mentioned that as an administrative thing. Now,
Page 43?
that's 43, yeah.
Okay.
Then you refer to the fact that you had a whole bunch of money in banks that exceeded the FDIC. Do you collateralize those the banks? You ask them to post collateral, or you just rely on their credit?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Page 42, you refer to the fact that you got deposits in a huge amount of dollars there. I couldn't figure it out. Is that $1 billion? And if that's right, which $845,000 exceeded the FDIC limit of 250. An awful lot of people who do that get the banks to collateralize the obligation. Why don't you?
It's million, not billion. The cash in the bank, it's not billion.
I got confused about where the zeros belong, but because you don't say anything about it. But in any event, why do you take any risk with the banks? Why don't you just ask them to put collateral up? A lot of your confrères in the city do.
The cash in the bank is for the administrative expenses. So we keep those to pay the administrative expenses. There, we have a checking account and an account at the custodial bank.
No, I understand that, but you say here that of which 845,000 and 243,000 exceeded the FDIC insured limit. So, to the extent that you're uninsured by the FDIC, why don't you ask the banks to put up collateral? Now, I understand that you may not care about the credit risk because of the world, but lots of folks, when they have more than $250,000, get the financial institutions post collateral. I just wonder why you didn't.
We can take that back.
I don't know if you want to bother, but it's a fairly standard practice. I must tell you, the rejoinder you sometimes get is, well, they provide services and otherwise they would charge us for it. But I kind of doubt that. That's one thing. We'll say, whoops. This is. The rest is proofreading stuff on my part. Okay, that's okay. Forgive me, folks, I'm just doing it.
Take your time, Mark.
Mike, I think most of what I have here
is there a way that you could get it to Katrina?
I'll mail the whole thing back tomorrow.
To Katrina, and then Katrina possibly could have her staff scan it, send it to Beth and Joan.
Katrina, just send me the address you want it mailed to.
Sure.
Now. When you turn over to page 43, there's a policy, money not held in the funds period for 32 calendar years. There's a statement here that each participant's account is credited with amounts authorized for deferral or completed incoming transfers within 4 business days of receipt. Receipt of what? I'll point that out. Something missing. I don't want to.
23?
I tell you, this is such little bits and pieces that I think it's not worth having everybody sit around. Let me get the pages to whoever you want me to send the pages to. They can get it on to you, and you can fix it up next year.
Okay.
All right. Anybody else have any questions, comments?
Well, cybersecurity, but I don't know if we're on that yet.
Yeah, no, so I just
One thing I will tell you, that a lot of the financial statements that are coming out now have something in the statement that discusses, say, a virus sort of boilerplate statement about I know it's after the date, but the post date, all the ones I see now have some language about saying, watch out, whatever we told you is affected by the virus. You decided not to have anything here because it's marketable securities and nothing to do with an operating company, or why don't you reflect it at all in the financial statements as a post-dated, post-event?
You're referring to the footnote disclosures.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
About COVID?
Yes, ma'am. See, I do mostly public company stuff, and all the companies I involve with have in their footnotes, even if they're December 31 financial statements, a post-date thing that has something to do with virus. Now, you don't have to worry about, you're not selling securities and it doesn't trade. Maybe that's why you're not doing it. But it's rare that I haven't seen any that have been put out without some statement, whether it's a line or two or a paragraph or two. We send around at the law firm, we have somebody whose job it is to watch these disclosures, and we send it out to our mailing list.
Maybe I can ask the auditors if they've seen anything with their government clients.
I think it might be worth asking.
Okay.
Mike, that's my comments on that stuff.
Okay, thank you, Mark. If nobody else
I'm
has
sure the accounts have it, but if you would like, I could send you a selection that we put out every day of the latest stuff that's said on the virus. But those are public company stuff. And I'm sure the accountants are familiar with it.
If there are no other issues or comments about the financials, I'd like to go on to the cybersecurity report.
Oh, Mike, one question. Forgive me. You guys have an audit committee?
Yes, we do.
And they meet regularly? And
Yes, they meet during the audit. They are members of the Comptroller's Office, the Department of Finance, and Office of Management and Budget.
okay.
They
Thank you.
meet during the audit and with the auditors, and they present to the board as well.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
You're welcome.
So turn it over to the assessment on the information technology.
Could I ask a question before they start, just to get a macro background? I understand that we have a record-keeping contract, which used to be FastCore, and it's now, I guess, moved over to Voya. I think it would be helpful to understand what data is maintained by who. I mean, this cybersecurity analysis, I think, and that's what I want to understand, is of the deferred comp IT database, not the record keeper database. And I think it would be helpful to understand what data is maintained by FastCore and what data is actually in the deferred comp system that this analysis is looking at, and how those two systems interface with each other and how it passes stuff along.
You'd like to see that in the cyber report as an introduction?
I just like to I think it would be helpful if you just told us.
Oh, okay. Okay, sure. Yes, the record keeper maintains all the financial and transactional data for the participants. The plan is only holding with PII or personal information because we interface with the payrolls. So it would be a social security number, employee ID, name, address, agency, things of that nature. All financial data and any transactions are held by the record keeper. What we pass to the record keeper is payroll information. So it would be Beth Kushner had a payroll deduction of $200, and that would be passed through to the record keeper.
And from a cybersecurity basis, most of the real data, if you will, is in the record keeper system. I mean, what you have in your system is some, if you will, it's important information. It's the employee, the sale address, salary information. But if I wanted to monkey around with the actual investment data, that you really don't have.
We do not have that information. That is correct.
So that's not what's being reviewed. What's being reviewed by this cybersecurity, again, I may be wrong, is focusing on what's on the deferred comp IT database, right?
That is correct.
And is that a DoIT system or is it something else?
No, we work with DoIT and we follow all the DoIT policies and guidelines as well as Cyber Command. However, we are not part of the DoIT centralized database or where they maintain the databases.
And if I'm a member and I'm requesting a change, either an investment change or I want money withdrawn, I start that change in the deferred comp system, right? By a form or whatever. And then it's transferred in some fashion to the record keeper where it's actually implemented. Actually,
all transactions are done directly on the record keeper system. So we have moved away from paper in that respect. So if you would like to move funds within your account or change your investment allocation or even change your deferral, how much is coming out of your paycheck, that is done through the IVR or the website directly on the record keeper system.
That's a fairly recent change?
That's been for some while now. And what happens is on a weekly basis, we get a feed from the record keeper saying that Beth Kushner changed her deferral, and that is sent to the plan where we would then send that to payroll.
But if I want to change how much I'm withdrawing, where does that take place?
That is a form that is processed by the staff of our record keeper.
So it's not done, it's a form, it's a paper, you print off a paper form off from the webpage. It gets filled out and it gets notarized and then mailed back and it goes to the record keeper to implement the change.
That is correct.
So that stuff, again, is not within the deferred comp IT.
That is correct. That is correct. That information is entered directly into the record keeper's database.
All right. And I'm assuming as part of the contracting process when we went to the new record keeper, they provided some kind of documentation and quality control about how they're dealing with cybersecurity?
Yes, they did. And they also, in part of their contract includes their fraud protection as well.
Okay, I just thought it would be useful to have a background because really the real detailed financial data that is not in the deferred comp database. It's often this record keeping system, which is somewhere else.
Right. Deferred comp does not retain any or have any financial information in our database.
Okay, I just thought that'd be helpful because I wanted to make sure which is what I thought, but I wanted to make sure that that's what this cyber review was of that particular kind of data.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Could I ask a peculiar question? What is this logo supposed to represent at the top?
That's a squirrel. You're squirreling away your money. It's not a rodent. It's not a rodent. It's a squirrel.
The question was, what is a squirrel? It's a rodent, huh? Okay.
Interesting. So
Took me a minute to figure it out.
I guess this is a question more towards the auditors, like if they want to give us an overview for what's in this report.
Or I can give an overview here.
Excellent.
I'm Phil Dabella. I was the manager on the security assessment formed by CLA. You were exactly right. So this report covers the systems, controls, and technology used by the deferred comp plan. As part of that, with the VOIA, even back to the VOIA conversion and due diligence, we were involved to look at some of the security as provided around what they're doing to protect all their data. And then additionally, VOIA provides a third-party audit SOC 2 report that tests the controls around the security on an annual basis for what they're doing. So every year when we do the security assessment of the deferred comp plan, we'll take a look at that VOIA SOC report to make sure that there's no red flags or risks identified in their audit report of their security controls. So just to give a high level of this report, this is the second year working with deferred comp plan. We covered just the overall cybersecurity practices, controls, and technology and tools. Happy to say, a lot of the recommendations we had from the first year, looking at everything, were implemented and taken very seriously. Things like increasing documentation around ticketing system for changes, vulnerability management, and things like that. The scope of our report covered all the domain for the deferred comp plan, all the applications, the data, the PII included in there as well. I don't know how much detail you want to get into, but I think from looking at the findings and recommendations in the summary table, we noted that there really wasn't anything of material or high risk type of finding that we would recommend implementing or making a change immediately. Most of the recommendations that we had included were either control testing that we did where something could just be strengthened or documented better, or we had a few that were just best practices or industry best practices that we recommended implementing to strengthen even further.
I thought the chart was very helpful that identified like the various types of comments. I was, I guess, happy to see there were no critical or moderate deficiencies. But you had mentioned prior year. Were all the prior year comments implemented and resolved?
Yes, there were. All the prior year comments were implemented. One of, I think we had 7 or 8 last year as well, similar. One of them was still a work in process related to access reviews being done periodically, but there was progress made towards it, just wasn't 100% implemented. Other than that, everything else was 100% implemented and none of them were repeat.
Okay, because that would be helpful to put into a report such as this, moving forward.
Yep, that's a good suggestion. We can definitely include that little summary table as well from kind of trending from the prior year to make sure everything was addressed, full status.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else have any comments?
Mike, again, I've got some stuff here. One of the things I have is your opinion says that it goes to the board of directors. This organization have an audit committee. So are you saying you can't give it to us as the city audit committee?
We can. We did present it to the audit committee for the plan.
Well, my suggestion, first of all, I hate that kind of stuff, this restriction, but all right. If you have to restrict it, you better say in there that includes the city audit as well as the local audit.
Okay. I'll make a note here.
Then I always ask this in this sort of thing. Has the organization had any hits to its system, which would lead it to think that people are sloppy or something?
No, they're other than the standard low risk type of attacks that any type of public facing internet gets. They have not had any incidents or breaches or anything like that would lead to somebody actually getting inside the network or being able to take any data or show signs that there's any sloppy security controls in place.
Good. Now, there's a reference in here with pervasive duties. What's the concept? I'm not familiar with that. What are pervasive duties?
What page are you on?
It's on page 5, but it occurs in a couple of places. There's a reference to other pervasive duties. What does that mean? It's obviously a word of art here. I don't know what it means.
Okay, so within access, segregation of duties, we would want to see, and we look to see that users who have specific administrator access, that kind of highest level of access on the system, that they do not have responsibility to perform accounting reconciliations, any type of other business process. So pervasive duties would be just holistic work, organization-wide responsibilities, other than focused on managing the information systems with that level of access.
I guess it's a word of art. I'm not familiar with it in this context. Okay. I haven't seen it before. So
going back to the record keeper, we just did the change. Could you give us an idea how the transition went from FastCore, who've been doing this for a very, very long time? Were there issues or problems or straightforward?
I might turn that over to Beth or Thomas.
I was going to ask, who are you asking? Are you asking the auditors or the plan?
Either one who can answer. Beth, if you can answer it, that'd be great.
Sure. We started the transition in, a year ago, or more than a year ago. The transition actually occurred on November 8th. And we transitioned from FastCore or Empower to Voya Financial, and that went fairly well. We had some data cleanup or some record cleanup after the year, and we continue to work with them on improving things. The transition went very well overall. All the records were transitioned, all the accounts were transitioned. Participants were issued new PIN numbers so that they could access their account on the new record keeping system. They had full access to both record keeping systems. Actually, we will be removing access to the Empower or FastCore system on June 30th, where participants can access detail on their account history, and all activity that they do is on the new record keeping system. But overall, the transition went fine.
On that point, where you're closing out access, is the historical data coming over to the Voya system so that somebody can look at their true historical perspective?
The historical, they do not retain all of the historical information. As you can imagine, it's quite a bit. We were with FastCore for over 20 years. But what we are doing is working with FastCore and Voya to take that historical data and create a separate database where the plan will have access to that. So we will retain all of our historical member information.
So there'll be some selective ability to go back and look at history by a client member.
That's correct. Okay. That is very important to us.
And then I guess the question for the auditor, I think you made reference that in part of doing your review, you checked on some documentation that the record keeper had appropriate reviews done as far as their cybersecurity. Did I understand that correctly, or did I misunderstand what you said?
Yeah, so the SOC report that we review, it's System and Organization Controls. It includes not only cybersecurity related controls, but also business process and what they're doing from managing the plan for you. So it tests all of their internal control, kind of similar to a Sarbanes-Oxley internal control report, but focused on what they're doing and the controls they have in place to process everything for the deferred comp plan.
I guess what I'm asking, given the importance of that record keeper and all the data they have, maybe it might make sense, may have some reference that you did that check in this report. So we have some understanding that there's been some kind of a review of their cyber situation.
Yeah, that's something that we discussed with Beth and her team internally this year, and something that we're adding to the report already for next year for CLA to do a documented review of those reports and include a summary.
That would be great, because just my opinion is that the most the data that somebody could do the most damage with is in the record keeper file. Not you could steal data out of the deferred comp and do some bad things with it, but I'm much more nervous about what could happen in the record keeper file of doing real major damage.
This is Thomas Ray, and I'll just piggyback off of both Phil's and Beth's comments. To the financial statement audit, certainly that's a risk area that we were concerned about. In an ideal world, that transition between FASCOR and Voya would have occurred right at the balance sheet date. Being that it did not, obviously, we were sensitive to that and did a full reconciliation of all the assets that came over from FASCOR, and then the mapping to the new Voya system. And then also, as part of the financial statement audit, in addition to what our IT, Phil's wearing two hats because he's also part of the IT team for the financial statement audit. We're reviewing those SOC 1 reports every year. We had reviewed those for completeness and gave feedback to the plan to share with Voya as to some additional things that we'd like to see in those reports. But those are being reviewed every year, and that's a good comment to kind of memorialize that in some manner, even if it's just in this report. But we're certainly doing that as part of the financial statement audit. And then lastly, echo your sentiments in terms of risks. When it comes to these defined contribution plans, that's probably, if there's been fraud, it's been immaterial. There hasn't been any significant breaches. But if you imagine this transition from paper to what is predominantly now, everything's done online. Every transaction is initiated typically via web-based access. However, there are participants out there, and we have not seen this in this plan. So I'm just giving an example of something we've seen in another large state plan where there are participants who have not set up an online account, for instance, and then fraudsters could potentially just go in and enroll them in an online account and then initiate transactions. So another thing that we look at is multi-factor authentication for those folks. So if someone were to create an account and then try to initiate a loan, there's a multi-step factor that would go into before that loan would be transacted. So certainly sensitive to those kind of things, but you're absolutely right. If there was going to be, and that might not be material to the plan, 23 billion, but certainly material to an individual participant. So we're sensitive to making sure those controls are in place as well.
Good. So whether it goes in the notes of the audit itself or goes into the IT review, I just think it would be helpful to give some comfort that those checks are taking place.
Absolutely. I think it's probably better in this cyber assessment report, but I did want to give the committee assurances that those types of reviews are being done as part of the financial statement audit as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions?
Let's go to page 6. There's some comments here, concepts. First of all, it says workstations and servers were patched. What's the concept behind patching a server?
So the concept is applying any type of update that the vendor, which would be Microsoft, pushes out for the software. They periodically put software patches, they call them updates, out there.
So it's
Every
not the
month.
machine itself, it's the programs in it. Okay, I quit.
Yes.
We get an up to date with patches and definitions in that concept.
Definitions would be related to antivirus. There's a library of virus definitions that the software scans for,
Okay,
and those get updated as well.
I understand now.
And Mr. Kaplan, I'm going to, from a layman's perspective, again, some of the, and Phil can probably testify as well, that some of the biggest frauds that have occurred or breaches that have occurred in recent memory are simply because those patches, they were available, but then they weren't applied. So they're there, but the entities hadn't actually implemented or applied those patches, and then were exposed to a data breach.
I'm the chairman of the audit committee of a public company that had that issue. Then you get, if I may get you to the number one, systems access management. This business of reviewing this thing every half a year. We do it at our firm every 90 days. This is a long time.
So the recommendation for every half of a year is really based on the amount of change between personnel turnover or just promotions or changes within the organization that would require access to be updated. And so that's why it was kind of recommended at that frequency, because of the limited turnover within the deferred comp plan. There's other compensating controls around intrusion detection and looking at access on a daily basis that are occurring. But that's where why the frequency of.
So you're comfortable with it for every 6 months rather than 90 days?
Based on the turnover, the number of employees, and the type of access, I would think so.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mike, I have nothing else. I'll do the same thing with this document that I did with the others.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Beth and Joan and Tom, for your overview and report for the deferred comp plan for the year ending 2019. With that said, I'd like to now go into executive session and have a motion to go into.
Motion to go into executive session.
Uh-oh.
And that will just be members and any of their staff that they would like, and the city auditors. Just to have an overview.
Okay, so are we dropping you off?
I didn't hear what?
We can drop off now?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. All right, thank you so much.
You.
Everybody stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a public.
This is probably the shortest meeting of the audit committee in all the years I've been on it.
We're live now, guys.
That mimics the minutes of last month's meeting.
Yes. Well, if somebody sends me who I should mail this stuff to, I'll put it in an envelope. It'll take a couple of days because Mr. Trump's impact on the post office is uncertainty up here.
Are we back into open?
We're in open session.
Okay. That concludes the meeting for today. So I'd like to have a motion to adjourn the.
So moved.
Meeting. Thank you. I want to wish everybody a happy summer. Well, and you and everybody be safe and be well.
You too.
Thank you. All the best.